Okay, I'm still on the first chapter here. I think I'm on page 16. Let's just start at the top of 16. Think on this deeply, and you will see that it is true. This is what I've called the sponsoring thought. It is either a thought of love or fear. This is the thought behind the thought, behind the thought. So the sponsoring thought is like the original thought. It is the first thought. It is a prime force. It is a raw energy that drives the engine of human experience. And here's how human behavior produces repeat experience after repeat experience. It is why humans love, then destroy, then love again. Always there is a swing from one emotion to the other. Love sponsors fear, which sponsors love, which sponsors fear. And the reason is found in the first lie, the lie which you hold as truth about God, that God cannot be trusted, that God's love cannot be depended upon, that God's acceptance of you is conditional. Do you know what that means? Conditional is like that he won't love you if you do certain things, if you're like doing something bad. That ultimate outcome is thus in doubt, for you cannot depend on God's love to always be there. On whose love can you depend? So, I mean,
Daddy, I can't understand this type of book. It's not the type of thing I can get into and picture the story, and I don't understand this type of book.
I know, it's hard to get into when you haven't heard the beginning.
No, it's not that. It's just, this is complex stuff that you know about, but I just don't.
You're just 10. Well, that's the thing, is I want to be able to read it and understand it as if I'm a 10-year-old. So if you don't understand it, then it can help me learn to understand it differently.
What do you mean by that?
Because I want to be able to understand it on a 4th grade level in a way that you would understand it, you know?
Not really.
I'm trying to simplify it so it makes more sense for both of us.
Okay.
Let's just finish the chapter and see what we can figure out together. Because you can help me learn things too. I'm not just trying to teach you something. If God retreats and withdraws when you do not perform properly, will not mere mortals also? And so it is that the moment you pledge your first highest love, you greet your greatest fear. For the first thing you worry about after saying I love you is whether you'll hear it back. And if you hear it back, then you begin immediately to worry that the love you just found you will lose. And so all action becomes a reaction, defense against loss, even as you seek to defend yourself against the loss of God. Yet if you know who you are, that you are the most magnificent, the most remarkable, the most splendid being God has ever created, you would never fear. I gotta mark that. You are the most magnificent, the most remarkable, and the most splendid being God has ever created. And if you know that, you'd never fear. For who could reject such wondrous magnificence? Not even God could find fault in such a being. But you do not know who you are, and you think you are a great deal less. And where did you get the idea of how much less than magnificent you are? From the only people whose word you would take on everything from your mother and your father. That's interesting that your mom and dad are trying to make you feel like you're the best and that you are the most magnificent, but yet they're the ones that seem to make you feel like you're less than magnificent.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if you feel anything less than the most magnificent, the most remarkable, and the most splendid being God has ever created, then why is that? Why would you feel less than that? Because if you felt that way, you'd never fear, because you would know that you're the most magnificent and remarkable.
Yeah.
So how do you begin to feel what's true, and that's that you are the best ever? Do you feel like your parents have made you feel like you're less than the best?
No, definitely not.
That's good. I guess my parents sort of did. I don't think they meant to, and that's the thing. I don't think parents ever mean to. But when my parents told me that things were wrong and that I shouldn't do things, then it made me think that God would believe the same thing. But really, God just loves no matter what. And parents pretty much do, but they try to tell you that there's something else you should be doing, seems like. These are the people who love you the most. Why would they lie to you? Yet they have not told you that you are not much of this and not of that. Have they not reminded you that you are to be seen and not heard? Have they not scolded you in some of the moments of your greatest exuberance? And did they not encourage you to set aside some of your wildest imagining? These are the messages you've received, and though they do not meet the criteria and are thus not messages from God, they might as well have been, for they might have come from the gods of your universe, surely enough. It's like your parents are kind of all you know in your whole universe for a while.
But that's not how it works for me anymore. Definitely not.
Well, that's good. But it happened that way before?
Well, I mean, I don't know how you mean it, but how I would think you meant it is like you're just alone, cooped up, and don't know anyone other than parents. And like, I mean, I never felt that feeling, but it's a thing that does happen to everybody when they're young, obviously.
So you must feel no fear because you already know that you are the bestest thing ever.
Bestest isn't in the word, but yeah.
That's good. You can pretty much do anything you want when you believe that. Let's see. It was your parents who taught you that love is conditional. You have felt their conditions many times, and that is the experience you take into your own love relationships. It is also the experience you bring to me. From this experience, you draw your conclusions about me. Within this framework, you speak your truth. God is a loving God, you say, But if you break his commandments, he will punish you with eternal banishment and everlasting damnation. So isn't that what some people feel from their parents? That if you do what they tell you not to do, they'll punish you?
Yeah.
So
Not all.
yeah, not all times. So it's easy to believe that God would do the same thing, huh? But it's not like that. Have you not experienced the banishment of your own parents? Do you not know the pain of their damnation? How then could you imagine to be any different with me? You have forgotten what it was like to be loved without condition. You do not remember the experience of the love of God, and so you try to imagine what God's love must be like, based on what you see of love in the world. You have projected the role of parent onto God, and have thus come up with a God who judges and rewards or punishes based on how good he feels about what you've been up to. But this is a simplistic view of God based on your mythology. It has nothing to do with who I am. Having thus created an entire thought system about God based on human experience rather than spiritual truths, you then create an entire reality around love. It is fear-based reality rooted in the idea of fearful, vengeful God. Its sponsoring thought is wrong, but to deny that thought would be to disrupt your whole theology. And though the new theology, which would replace it, would truly be your salvation, you cannot accept it because the idea of God who is not to be feared, who will not judge, and who has no cause to punish is simply too magnificent to be embraced within even your grandest notion of who and what God is. That's weird that most people can't change their paradigm about this guy who is just mad and punishes people. They don't see the unconditional love, like you can't make a wrong choice because you're always permanently loved. But then we get all scared because, like, what if somebody doesn't love us? This fear-based love reality dominates your experience of love, indeed actually creates it. For not only do you see yourself receiving love which is conditional, you also watch yourself giving it the same way. So it's funny that, yeah, you like have the experience of receiving love that's conditional, and so you tend to like give it the same way, which means you don't fully give the love without it being worth something. But you're not like that. You always just give your love no matter how much love you'll get back.
Yeah, and I think that's true.
It's interesting to see the differences between you being young and me being a little more experienced. Like, I have a different version of the story. Like, you've mostly been accepted is how you feel. And there's some things in my life that I haven't felt accepted, but I think that more kids these days are feeling more and more accepted. I feel like my parents accept me now, but before they were trying to make sure I did the right thing.
Sorry, have I been too quiet through?
No, I think you're just trying to understand it in your own way.
I just don't know what to say.
Yeah, I don't know what to say a lot of times when you're reading your book either, huh?
Yeah.
Well, that's okay. It's easier to picture it when you're the one that's reading it.
Mhm.
But your thoughts and your ideas make me think of new things. And even while you withhold and retreat and set your conditions, A part of you knows this is not what love really is. Still, you seem powerless to change the way you dispense it. You learn the hard way. You tell yourself, and you'll be damned if you're going to leave yourself vulnerable again. Yet, the truth is, you'll be damned if you don't. By your own mistaken thoughts about love, do you damn yourself never to experience it purely. So the way we think about love is like the only way we can receive love. If we think that we're gonna, don't you think if we imagine we're gonna get love only if we do certain things or do the right things, then that's kind of what we experience. But if we imagine that we can get love in any way for doing anything, it seems like we just feel more love more of the time.
And this happens with books like all the time. You read to me about like problems and things about how people are thinking and how people should be thinking, and I'm like, I've never had these problems. I've never done these things that are told to be the wrong perspective ever before. I mean, I guess they're not told to be the wrong perspective. What are these things, these problems told to be?
Some people have the wrong perspective about the ideas.
But wrong perspective, I don't think is a real thing.
Right. It's just perspective.
But it still gives a perspective that is better and gives a perspective that is, in their opinion, worse. And the worst perspective I've never had on anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and your perspective has always been accepted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that makes it a lot more powerful, because then you know that next time you have an idea or inspiration, you know that you'll be heard and that people want to hear your perspective. Whether or not they're going to agree with it doesn't really matter, because you'll be loved and accepted for your ideas.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Every action taken by human beings is based in love or fear, not simply those dealing with relationships. Decisions affecting business, industry, politics, religion, and education for your young. The social agenda of your nations, the economic goals of your society, choices involving war, peace, attack, defense, aggression, submission, deteriorations, to covet or give away, to save or to share, to unite or to divide. Every single free choice you ever undertake arises out of one of the only two possible thoughts there are, a thought of love or a thought of fear. That's making it sound like there's only two choices that we ever make. Like the sponsoring thought, the beginning thought is based on, like, am I going to feel loved, or am I going to feel accepted, or do I have to worry about having those feelings? I'm just going to be afraid of this thing happening, so I'm not going to make this choice. Fear is the energy which contracts, closes down, draws in, runs, hides, hoards, harms. Love is the energy which expands, opens up, sends out, stays, reveals, shares, heals. Fear wraps our bodies in clothing. Love allows us to stand naked. Fear clings to and clutches all that we have. Love gives all that we have away. Fear holds close, love holds dear. Fear grasps, love lets go. Fear rankles, love soothes. Fear attacks, love amends. Every human thought, word, or deed is based in one emotion or the other. You have no choice about this because there is nothing else from which to choose, but you have free choice about which of these to select. But like, why would you want to select the fear? But you can recognize when you are experiencing that, because it's like, well, this definitely comes from the sponsoring thought of fear, so I'm going to face this fear and do it anyway and express myself with love. And then you conquer. Can you hear Willow scratching the box?
Slightly.
She's trying to climb this box. Silly kitty.
Well, kitty. I miss her so much.
She's a cutie. She was climbing into the cabinets today. I don't know how she got the door open. She's pretty tricky. Especially for only having 3 legs.
Yeah, I was about to say, which kitty are you talking about? Away.
Yeah, it's Willow. You make it sound so easy, and yet the moment of decision, fear wins more often than not. Why is that? You have been taught to live in fear. You have been told about the survival of the fittest and the victory of the strongest and the success of the cleverest. Precious little is said about the glory of the most loving. And so you strive to be the fittest, the strongest, and the cleverest in one way or the other. And if you see yourself as something less than this in any situation, you fear loss. For you have been told that to be less is to lose. I think none of us are less. None of us can be less. But we're worried about it not being important to just be the most loving. But being the most loving gets you the furthest and the most success. It makes you the cleverest and the strongest. And so, of course... What?
Wait, you say there is no lower being, but you used to think differently about that and saying that you were a higher being, which would make other people lower.
No one can be lower. I'm higher than myself, but I'm not higher than you.
That's what you would
And
say.
even myself now has another higher version of myself. Because I can always be more loving. There's always a lot of things I can do better. What I mean is, like, there's a higher path, a higher road to take, and that's by working to be the most loving. That's the highest path there is. It's my highest path. Just want to love the most, huh? That's how I can be more like you. Okay. And so, of course, you choose the action fear sponsors, for that is what you've been taught. Yet I teach you this. When you choose the action love sponsors, then you will do more than survive. Then you will do more than win. Then you will do more than succeed. Then you will experience the full glory of who you really are and who you can be.
Kitty. Kitty,
You can hear her meowing.
yeah.
To do this, you must turn aside the teachings of your well-meaning but misinformed worldly tutors and hear the teachings of those whose wisdom comes from another source. It's like that source comes from yourself. There are many such teachers among you. As always, there have been, for I will not leave you without those who would show you, teach you, guide you, and remind you of these truths. Yet the greatest reminder is not anyone outside you, but the voice within you. This is the first tool that I use because it is the most accessible. A lot of people forget to hear their own voice. It's hard to hear because it's the quietest.
Well, that isn't always true. Or, I mean, you always feel like your voice is the quietest, yeah? But that doesn't mean that's always true.
Can it be hard to listen to?
What be hard to listen to? Your own voice?
Yeah.
Sometimes, because there's other voices trying to lead you straight. I don't know, man. I don't know how to.
Yeah?
Okay.
Yeah, the voice inside you is the most accessible, though. It's always right there. The voice within is the loudest voice with which I speak because it is the closest to you. It is the voice which tells you whether everything else is true or false, right or wrong, good or bad, as you have defined it. It is the radar that sets the course, steers the ship, guides the journey, if you will but let it. But it's like the voice inside of you is good or bad as you have defined it. So you just have to listen to what yourself believes. It is the voice which tells you right now whether the very words you are reading are words of love or words of fear. By this measure, can you determine whether they are words to heed or words to ignore? So basically, if you can sense that love is the sponsoring thought, then they're words you should heed. But if it feels like it's coming from a place of fear, then you should probably not listen to that side.
Pizza. You go get that pizza. Thanks, Frankie. Sorry, Daddy. Keep reading.
You said that when I always choose the action that love sponsors, then I will experience the full glory of who I am and who I can be. Will you expand on this, please? There is only one purpose for all of life, and that is for you and all that lives to experience fullest glory. Everything else you say, think, or do is attendant to that function. There is nothing else for your soul to do, and nothing else your soul wants to do. The wonder of this purpose is that it is never ending. An ending is a limitation, and God's purpose is without such a boundary. Should there come a moment in which you experience yourself in fullest glory, you will in that instant imagine an ever greater glory to fulfill. The more you are, the more you can become, and the more you can become, the more you can yet be. The deepest secret is that life is not a process of discovery, but a process of creation. You are not discovering yourself, but creating yourself anew. Seek, therefore, not to find out who you are. Seek to determine who you want to be. And you can be whatever you want to be. See, that's kind of what I meant, is that once you reach your fullest glory, then you can like imagine what an even glory would look like, the glorious. And you can reach for that and do more. You can create more of what you want to be. And then there's even something higher. But sometimes it takes a long time for you to reach what you think is your fullest glory before you can think of another one, huh? You're like, this is how I'm doing my best, and it'll take me a while to be that kind of best. And then before you get there, you think of another way that you can be even better.
Okay, thanks, Brad. Daddy, why do you stop reading sometimes?
Because it just makes me think about stuff. There are those who say that life is a school and that we are here to learn specific lessons, that once we graduate we can go on to larger pursuits, no longer shackled by the body. Is this correct? It is another part of your mythology based on human experience. Life is not a school? No. We are not here to learn lessons? No. Then why are we here? To remember and to recreate who you are. I have told you over and over again, you do not believe me. Yet that is well as it should be. For truly, if you do not create yourself as who you are, that you cannot be. So if you don't create yourself as something, then how could you be that thing? Okay, you've lost me. Let's go back to the school bit. I've heard teacher after teacher tell us that life is a school. I'm frankly shocked to hear you deny that. School is a place you go if there is something you do not know that you want to know. It is not a place you go if you already know a thing and simply want to experience your knowingness. Life, as you call it, is an opportunity for you to know experientially what you already know conceptually. That means, like, you know something conceptually means you, like, know that it exists and that it's possible and that it's your fullest glory, but then knowing it experientially is like actually doing and actually becoming your fullest glory. You need to learn nothing to do this. You need merely remember that you already know what you already know and act on it. Basically, you need to remember that you already are the fullest glory, and then do the thing that comes up to your mind. Neil says, I'm not sure I understand. Let's start here. The soul, your soul, knows all there is to know all the time. There's nothing hidden to it, nothing unknown. Yet knowing is not enough. The soul seeks to experience. Do you believe that your soul knows everything? Do you think that it knows all there is to know all the time?
Dad, I don't have answers.
Yeah, I don't either. But it feels like it's true that my soul always knows, like, the next step or can imagine my highest glory. You can know yourself to be generous, but unless you do something which displays generosity, you have nothing but a concept. You can know yourself to be kind, but unless you do someone a kindness, you have nothing but an idea about yourself. It is your soul's only desire to turn its grandest concept about itself into its greatest experience. Until concept becomes experience, all there is speculation. I have been speculating about myself for a long time, longer than you and I could collectively remember, longer than the age of the universe times the age of the universe. You see then how how new is my experience of myself. This is a confusing paragraph. So basically, your soul knows that it's good, but it wants to experience that it's good. Your soul says, I'm a good person, but then it wants to see you being a good person. And then it proves it. I knew I was. Let me explain it to you this way. In the beginning, that which is all there was, and there was nothing else. Yet all that is could not know itself, because all that is all there was, and there was nothing else. And so all that is was not. For in the absence of something else, all that is not. What? So if it's all there is, then there's nothing else. That's silly.
What's silly?
Because all that there was couldn't know that it was until it knew what it was not. It's kind of how I'm interpreting it. You have to see the experience to know that it's truth.
Yeah, that's what it's been saying the whole time.
This is the great is not is, to which mystics have referred from the beginning of time. Now all that is knew it was all there was. But this was not enough, for it could only know its utter magnificence conceptually, not experientially. Yet for the experience of itself is that for which it longed, for it wanted to know what it felt like to be so magnificent. Still, this was impossible because of the term magnificent is a relative term. So it's like, if you say magnificent, you have to know what isn't magnificent to be able to understand what is magnificent.
Which makes sense, right?
Yeah. Still, this was impossible because the very term magnificent is a relative term. All that is could not know what it felt like to be magnificent unless that which is not showed up. In the absence of which is not, that which is not. Do you understand this? I think so. Keep going. All right. The one thing that all that is knew is that there was nothing else, and so it could and would never know itself from a reference point outside of itself. Such a point did not exist. Only one reference point existed, and that was the single place within. The is not is. The am not am. So, if you think about it like a person, being like, you can picture God being a person, and that person knew that it was everything in the whole universe. It knew it was everything, but then to be able to see itself, it had to see what it wasn't. And then it wanted to see itself doing what it was so it would know that it was. This energy, this pure, unseen, unheard, unobserved, and therefore unknown by anyone else, energy chooses to experience itself as the utter magnificence it was. In order to do this, it realized it would have to use a reference point within. It reasoned quite correctly that any portion of itself would necessarily have to be less than the whole, and that if it thus simply divided itself into portions, each portion, being less than the whole, could look back on the rest of itself and see magnificence. And so all that is divided itself, becoming, in one glorious moment, that which is this, and that which is that. For the first time, this and that existed, quite apart from each other, and still both existed simultaneously, as did all that was neither. Well, there's a lot of perspectives here, because the one wanted to be able to be seen as the most magnificent, so it divided itself up, so each part knew it was part of the whole, so it could see how magnificent it really was. But then three elements suddenly existed: that which is here, that which is there, and that which is neither here nor there, but which must exist for here and there to exist. Because it can't be here if it's there. It has to be neither. That is a conundrum. It is the nothing which holds the everything. It is the non-space which holds the space. It is the all which holds the parts. Can you understand this? Are you following this? I think I am, actually, believe it or not. You have used such a clear illustration that I think I'm actually understanding this. That's a lot to understand, though, because you have to be able to imagine a place, but then you have to be able to say what's not that place. Like, this is what home looks like, and I know this other thing is not that, so it must not be home. This is a long chapter. Look it, now I'm counting the pages. So far we've read from page 16 to 21. So that's like 8 pages. Oh, maybe less. No, not 21. We read through 23, actually. Are you getting bored yet?
No.
It's been like 45 minutes almost. You want to keep going?
Well, how many chapters does it have?
It has a lot of chapters. The first chapter ends.
I didn't mean chapters. I meant pages.
How many pages in the chapter?
Yeah.
There's still like another 15 pages.
That might be bored.
Yeah, I'm still turning the pages. 55. Chapter 2 is on page 59. And we're on page 24. This is a long book, huh?
Yup.
That's kind of why it's been hard for me to get going in it. Because it's a hard book to understand. And you like have to really think about each page as you read it. But it helps to put the markings in it. Okay, let's see how fast I can read page 24. I bet I get stopped on something, though. I'm going to go even further. Now this nothing which holds the everything is what some people call God. Yet that is not accurate either, for it suggests that there is something God is not, namely everything that is not nothing. But I am all things, seen and unseen. So this description of me is the great unseen, the no thing, or the space between. An essentially Eastern mystical definition of God is no more accurate than the essentially Western practical description of God as all that is seen. Those who believe that God is all that is and all that is not are those whose understanding is correct.
See, it's trying to say there's a correct understanding, which I don't believe and I don't agree with that.
Well, I think what's correct, because some people are saying that God is the unseen, and other people are saying that God is what's seen. But what's really correct is that God is both unseen and seen. It's all of it. God is everything and nothing.
But that doesn't mean there's a correct and incorrect perspective.
Well, anything that's incorrect is incomplete. Because there needs to be more, because you can't say that God is one thing without him also being the opposite. You can't even say him because it's also her. Because God is both. God is everything. I think that's what it's trying to say.
I keep getting texts from Owen.
Oh, really? You've been texting Owen?
No, I haven't been texting Owen. I don't actually 100% know it's from Owen.
Oh.
That's just what I think it is, because he was texting me earlier and he called me like, are you not seeing my messages again? Because that happens sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm seeing his, but he's not seeing my responses. And he's like, is it that thing happening again? I was just like, no, I'm in the other room. I'll text you back, because he called me and said that right after you called me, and I missed it.
Oh.
So I wanted to call you back, and now he's like, bro, I thought you were going to respond.
Yep. Yep. Are you going to respond to him then?
I'm going to respond to him when we're done.
Okay. Now in creating that which is here and that which is there, God made it possible for God to know itself. In the moment of the great explosion from within, God created relativity, the greatest gift God ever gave to itself. Thus, relationship is the greatest gift God ever gave to you, a point to be discussed in detail later. From the no thing, thus sprang the everything, a spiritual event entirely consistent, incidentally, with what your scientists called the Big Bang Theory. As the elements of all raced forth, time was created. For a thing was first here, and then it was there. And the period it took to get from here to there was measurable, just as the parts of itself which are seen began to define themselves relative to each other, so did the parts which are unseen. God knew that for love to exist, and to know itself as pure love, its exact opposite had to exist as well. So God voluntarily created the great polarity, the absolute opposite of love, everything that love is not, which is now called fear. In the moment fear existed, love could exist as a thing that could be experienced. Yeah, so love couldn't even exist until fear existed. And God has to be everything, so God is love and is fear. And God loves fear because that fear helps it to be able to show what love is, because love is not fear. It's the opposite. It is this creation of duality between love and its opposite which humans refer to in their various mythologies as the birth of evil, the fall of Adam, the rebellion of Satan, and so forth. But really, it was all just the creation. Just as you have chosen to personify pure love as the character you call God, so you have chosen to personify abject fear as the character you call the devil. Which gets confusing because duality doesn't really exist. We talked about this in your book, that the two but not two. Like,
Yeah.
God is both love and fear, but it's also just, he's also neither, but both. Some on Earth have established rather elaborate mythologies around this event, complete with scenarios of battles and war, angelic soldiers and devilish warriors, the forces of good and evil, of light and dark. This mythology has been mankind's early attempt to understand and to tell others in a way they could understand, a cosmic occurrence of which the human soul is deeply aware, but of which the mind can barely conceive. Your mind can't really understand that both those things are the same thing because they're opposites. So that gets confusing. In rendering the universe as a divided version of itself, God produced from pure energy all that now exists, both seen and unseen. In other words, not only was the physical universe thus created, but the metaphysical universe as well. The part of God which forms the second half of the M naught M equation also exploded into an infinite number of units smaller than the whole. These energy units you would call spirits. So each of us are created as part of the whole, which really makes us nothing and everything. In some of your religious mythologies, it is stated that God the Father had many spirit children. The parallel of the human experience of life multiplying itself seems to be the only way the masses could be made to hold in reality the idea of the sudden appearance, the sudden existence of countless spirits in the kingdom of heaven. In this instance, your mythical tales and stories are not so far from ultimate reality, for the endless spirits comprising the totality of me are, in a cosmic sense, my offspring. But it's not offspring like they're spirit children. They're like seeds, which are like children, but it's parts of the whole. Just like seeds are part of the tree made those seeds, and then it makes more of itself. My divine purpose in dividing me was to create sufficient parts of me so that I could know myself experientially. This is only one way for the Creator to know itself experientially as a creator, and that is to create. And so I gave to each of the countless parts of me, to all my spirit children, the same power to create which I have as the whole. So that seed of the tree has the power to make its own seeds. Because it has to grow up to be like its mother. And that whole time, the mother tree can experience what it's like to be a child and to be a little baby tree, because it watches itself grow up into a big tree. So it's kind of like me being your father, and I learn what it's like, what it was like for me to grow up by watching you grow up. Because then I remember what it's like, and then I experience growing up almost again,
Yeah.
See, sometimes it's easy to understand, but sometimes the words are kind of big and there's a lot of commas in a sentence. And then it's like, it's a long sentence. What does it really mean? This is what your religions mean when they say that you were created in the image and likeness of God. This doesn't mean, as some have suggested, that our physical bodies look like, although God can adopt whatever physical form God chooses for a particular purpose. It does mean that our essence is the same. We are composed of the same stuff. We are the same stuff, with all the same properties and abilities, including the ability to create physical reality out of thin air. My purpose in creating you, my spiritual offspring, was for me to know myself as God. I have no way to do that save through you. Thus it can be said, and has been many times, that my purpose for you is that you should know yourself as me. You are God. This seems so amazingly simple, yet it becomes very complex because there's only one way for you to know yourself as me, and that is for you first to know yourself as not me. So first you have to know that you're not, what parts of you are not God, so that you can realize what parts of you are. But it's weird because you are all parts.
It already went over the whole thing, like, you have to know what's not this to know what's this. It went over that again.
Yeah, good point. Good. Remember that you've asked for this explanation. You've waited for it for years. You've asked for it in layman's terms, not theological doctrines or scientific theories. Yes, I know what I've asked. And having asked, so shall you receive. Now, to keep things simple, I'm going to use your children for God mythological model as a basis for discussion because it is a model with which you are familiar, and in many ways, it is not that far off. So let's go back to how this process of self-knowing must work. There is one way I could have caused all of my spiritual children to know themselves as part of me, and that was simply to tell them. This I did, but you see, it was not enough for spirit to simply know itself as God, or part of God, or children of God, or inheritors of the kingdom, or whatever mythology you want to use. As I've already explained, knowing something and experiencing it are two different things. Spirit longed to know itself experientially, just as I did. Conceptual awareness was not enough for you, so I devised a plan. It is the most extraordinary idea in the universe, and the most spectacular collaboration. I say collaboration because all of you are in it with me. Under this plan, you, as pure spirit, would enter the physical universe just created. This is because physicality is the only way to know experientially what you know conceptually, because it's physical, you know. Now it's in front of your eyes, so now you know it really exists. It is in fact the reason I created the physical cosmos to begin with, and the system of relativity which governs it and all creation. Once in the physical universe, you, my children, could experience what you know of yourself, but first you had to come to know the opposite. To explain this simplistically, you cannot know yourself as tall unless and until you become aware of short. You have to know short before you can know tall. You can't experience the part of yourself that you call fat unless you also come to know thin. Taken to ultimate logic, you cannot experience yourself as what you are until you've encountered what you are not. This is the purpose of the theory of relativity and all physical life. It is by that which you are not that you are yourself defined. Now, in the case of ultimate knowing, in the case of knowing yourself as the creator, you cannot experience yourself as creator unless you and until you create. And you cannot create yourself until you uncreate yourself. In a sense, you have to first not be in order to be.
All right.
So how do you uncreate yourself? I guess you uncreate yourself by thinking about the things that you wouldn't want to do. Of who you aren't. Of course, there's no way. Oh, I forgot to show the. Page 26, 27. Now we're on page 28.
Are we still in the same chapter as before?
Yeah, until like page 60.
Wow.
So we're like halfway through the chapter. Of course, there is no way for you to not be what. There's no way for you to not be who and what you are. You simply are that pure creative spirit, have been always and always will be. So you did the next best thing. You caused yourself to forget who you really are. Upon entering the physical universe, you relinquished your remembrance of yourself. This allows you to choose to be who you are rather than simply wake up in the castle, so to speak. So now you can choose to be whatever you want to be. It is in the act of choosing to be rather than simply being told that you are a part of God that you experience yourself as being a total choice, which is what, by definition, God is. Yet how can you have a choice without something over which there is no choice? You cannot not be my offspring no matter how hard you try, but you can forget. You are, have always been, and will always be a divine part of the divine whole, a member of the body. This is why the act of rejoining the whole, of returning to God, is called remembrance. You actually choose to remember who you really are, or to join together with the various parts of you to experience the all of you, which is to say, all of me. Your job on earth, therefore, is not to learn, because you already know, but to remember who you are, and to remember who everyone else is. That is why a big part of your job is to remind others, that is, to remind them so they can remember also. We have to remind everyone that we're all parts of perfection, huh? We are all learning.
Yeah.
But we're not learning because we're just really remembering that we already knew that. All the wonderful spirit teachers have been doing just that. It is your sole purpose, that is to say, your sole purpose. My God, this is so simple and so symmetrical. I mean, it all fits in. It all suddenly fits. I see now a picture I have never quite put together before.
Dad,
Yeah.
I don't know when a good stopping place would be, because I definitely can't get through the entire.
Halfway is a pretty good stopping place. And page 28, the end of, we finished page 28, so now we're on page 29. And it's been an hour, so I'd say that's probably a pretty good place.
Okie dokie.
Thanks, Carson.
Uh-huh.
Thanks for getting me to read. I love you, bud.
Two.
I'll call you tomorrow.
Okay.
Or you can call me.
Daddy, this is totally unrelated,
Okay.
but I'm playing Minecraft Skyblock for the first time, and I want to show you how far into it I am.
Yeah?
And we would need to be on a FaceTime call, and I would have to hold my phone toward the screen and play.
Okay. Do you want to FaceTime?
Yeah, but how can I hold it toward the screen while I'm playing?
I don't know. Prop it up.
I have two hands.
You'll have to set it on something, I guess.
Okay, we'll try.
Okay, I love you.
You too.